Hey, welcome everyone to another GoDaddy Pro meetup. My name is Marcus Burnette, and I am on the GoDaddy Pro team. We have a very exciting guest joining me today to talk about some new WordPress features. But before we get started, though, real quick, I just want to let you know that I will be recording this meetup, and we'll have it posted shortly after. So if you need to jump out early, or if you want to share this with your team afterwards, there will be a replay available for that. And also, Courtney and I will both be checking in on the chat for any questions and stuff as we go along. So feel free to just toss those in the chat if you're joining us here live, and we'll sort of answer those as they come in. Without any further delay, I've already mentioned Courtney, but welcome Courtney Robertson. Courtney is a web designer and developer advocate for GoDaddy Pro, one of the WordPress training team co-reps, contributor to the latest version of WordPress, and much, much more. How are you doing today, Courtney?
I'm doing great. I love playing around with the block editor and full site editing, and it's just been a lot of fun getting to this point with the release and seeing 5.9 go out the door.
Awesome. Yeah, if the title of the webinar that you're here for didn't tip you off, today we are going to talk about WordPress 5.9, which was just released just over a week ago, and includes full site editing by default, which includes lots of block editor magic. And so Courtney is here to kind of walk us through some, tell us a little bit more about it, and give us a little bit of a demo. So I'm going to minimize myself as you share your screen, or I guess I'll be minimized as you share your screen, and I'll hang out and we'll sort of talk through it, but I'll let you lead the way, Courtney.
Fantastic. Thank you. So to get started, let me flip over to share my screen. Here we go. And yeah, that looks right. So to get started, we have to be running WordPress version 5.9. And if you ever forget, of course, right now on my screen, I see this big welcome message because this site was brand new installed and just updated. And when you do that, you get a welcome message. You can always dismiss this thing. But if you forget what version of WordPress you're on and you need to check, in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see version 5.9. So 5.9 is needed in order to test out what we're going to do. I will start under Appearance and then Themes and make sure that I've got 2022 installed. This is probably a good time to clarify why test it, even if you're not interested in putting this theme on your site. This is the new default theme that comes with WordPress version 5.9. When we have new features in WordPress, they try to show those off with whatever the latest default theme happens to be. And so oftentimes, if you are using a plugin from a third-party company and you experience some technical difficulties, they'll ask you, have you tested it with the latest default theme? Have you checked it rolling back to other themes? This is a good spot to also indicate if you look under Appearance with this theme installed and activated, you'll see that it says Editor and this big red button that says Beta. The beta is there to tell us or to set us up for the expectation. This is still beta. So please remember that some plugin companies at this time are not yet ready to support what's going on with the new default theme. It's always a good time to get in and test, but please do this on a sandbox site, whether you're using something like local WP, or if you're really interested in dev things, if you've got a Docker container going for it, or maybe a staging site, something to that effect where you don't want to do this live. Because I've heard reverting backwards causes all the widgets to go everywhere. So just be careful of that. Test in a safe spot. Expectation is this is just a beta version. That means that we still have work to do to make it feature complete, but we're at the point now where you could test a lot of these features without having to also install the Gutenberg plugin. The Gutenberg plugin made it possible to start testing these features actually back when 5.7 RC1 came out. So we're talking roughly last March. A lot of these features are ready to begin testing back then. I highly recommend, and I will share links for these. Anne has a great program. If you've heard the name Anne McCarthy around the release, Anne has a really great program for the FSE call for testing. If you go to make.wordpress.org/test, you will see various calls for testing. And I've been participating in those for a year now up to this point. And that's roughly what we're doing again today. Today's a little more simplified. We're just going to experiment with what's going on the front page of our site. So we've installed this theme. And as a quick reference point, here's what the front page of my site looks like. So if you don't install a block-based theme, WordPress 5.9, not a lot of changes. A couple things, some performance things, but you'll see that I've got a halfway done version to give as an orientation. And then I will take us through, after I give us a basic orientation, I'll take us through building one and then show you a version that I have that's basically done. So I'm going to actually hop between a couple points along the way. But
Yeah,
here's...
Courtney, just real quick. So 2022 is the default theme for WordPress 5.9. If you or some of the plugins that you're using are not ready for, the block editor and full site editing, what's the best thing to do after you've installed a new website? Just change the theme to a different theme?
Yeah, I would really do a proper testing. Do this on a sandbox site and test it with the plugins that you hope to use and see if those plugins are ready at this time to support things like this. I've heard just a little bit that plugins that are heavy on using shortcodes, and if they are doing a lot of custom taxonomy in particular, run into some glitches at this time. So it takes a while for plugin companies to make that shift. And really, this beta label is there to set that expectation. It's only now that those third-party plugin systems might be at a point where things are stable enough to begin working in that direction. So this is not suddenly we must all go and adopt the latest thing. This is, we're just now reaching a point where it's ready for the masses to start testing more deeply, I would say. Yeah, good question though. So to get into our theme, we go to the editor, and the editor will be slightly familiar at times, but also slightly different than what we saw with blocks inside of posts and pages. We have blocks everywhere now. And if you haven't taken a tour of the editor yet, this is a good time to do so, because this will be the direction that a lot of new themes will be moving into. And plugins are probably going to be working to support both directions, classic themes and block themes moving forward. This editor experience, there are a couple of parts to just get oriented to. In the top left corner, you see the WordPress logo. Love the logo, have been seeing it everywhere, especially today. But when I click on that logo, I see that this panel slides out from the left-hand side. That panel shows me how to get to templates and template parts, or to get back to my dashboard. So we have a left-hand menu that pops out. We also have, the next thing that I would highlight is the list view. The list view is great to show us, it's the three stacked lines that are slightly askew. That list view option is a great way to move blocks around or make sure that you are selecting exactly the block that you would want, because it can be tricky on some of these things, especially like the navigation block, to select the particular item that you want. But if you see it showing almost like an outline of your site, inside of any of those, you can expand and collapse these, and you could drag them around as you need to be able to order things. So if you feel frustrated, I can't click the block exactly that I want, or maybe I wanted to get the entire group of blocks, not just the one specific block, the list view will be your best friend for doing that. And that list view is also available in posts and pages too, to maintain the blocks that are in the content of a post or a page. So check out the list view if you haven't done so yet. Moving across the top, we have a way to toggle between templates. I'll come back to that one. Just note that that's up there. It's a fun feature. On the right-hand side, we've got settings. And the settings are similar to what you see in a post or a page. In a post or a page, this, instead of template, would say something like post or page on it and give you that publish option. Let me turn off that list view on the side to keep us streamlined as I can. So when I look under the settings, I have settings based upon the block that I've selected. So what you have under settings depends upon the thing that is in focus right now on the screen. So I picked a heading block, and this gives me some options that are here. I have options like colors, the colors for the theme. I have other options I could style, but that would style just this instance of this block. It would not change all headings everywhere. If I wanted to change the color, the fonts, whatever for everything everywhere, I would instead go to styles. Styles looks like this semicircle at the top of my screen. Let me turn settings off so you see this fresh. Styles at the top of my screen. We began building this, and I say we, but I'm not one of the devs. But this has been in the works for over a year, and this area was started to be referred to as global styles. We're dropping the word global. But understand when you go into this, it means global. It's everything inside of your website. You could style a lot of that right here. Previously, we relied on the customizer for a lot of these things, and now a good bit of it is going into styles. So within the styles area, we will see in version 6, most likely, a few different options besides this one at the top that would already be pre-configured for us. But let's say that I don't like this top option that's showing here, and I want to toggle between them. To do that, I could go into typography and change, for instance, the text. Now we have just 2 choices that are here, source and system font. System font pulls whatever your default font is on your computer and browser, whereas source is actually a font that Adobe makes, and it's bundled with the theme. If you dig into the theme files, we don't have lots of fonts that are here. There is a proposal to integrate and help us store the font files inside of our themes on our own sites instead of serving them third-party from like Google Fonts. There's a lot of interesting news about that. I would just say check out what's happening in Germany with Google Fonts for further research. At this time, though, we have just a few fonts that are showing here. If you get other plugins or know how to make a child theme or your own theme, you could certainly put those fonts in as well. But we have styling options for those fonts inside of this, and you could change the size, the height, how heavy the appearance of things are. And at the top, you'll notice I was in text and I hit this back arrow. I'm going to intentionally repeat myself a few times because there are a lot of menus flying everywhere, it feels like.
Yeah.
So
I'm going
text,
to interject
and then
real
go
quick,
back.
Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be clear on, just real quick, just the system font will be whatever font is on the visitor's computer. So
Yep.
that
Right.
will
Not
make your
my.
design look a little bit different from computer to computer. The other thing, we have a question in the chat. Can I use 5.9 with WooCommerce and the Theme Storefront? So I'll let you answer if you want to. As far as I know, WooCommerce, yes. Storefront, I don't believe is ready for full site editing just yet.
Right. So you can use WordPress 5.9, but the storefront theme is not yet part of full site editing. It doesn't implement all of these features yet.
Yeah. So if you upgrade to 5.9 and use the storefront theme, this really isn't going to probably pertain to you too much because it won't trigger any of the full site editing features.
Correct. But it is worth testing because when storefront is ready for full site editing features, you may also have extensions and other things that you might want to experiment with. So when you reach that point
definitely.
where storefront has FSE integration, test thoroughly. And you could even test on a block theme now. It wouldn't be any of the styles you want, but you could test how your extensions are performing with the FSE environment. That would still be good to keep an eye on. Don't sink too much time there at this point, but it's good to sort of help troubleshoot and raise the flags of concern that you may have along the way. So I was inside, let me regroup from here. I was inside styles and I went to typography, and you'll see typography has 2 options. It has text and links. And I dug specifically into text and was changing things. You could do the same thing under links. If you want to go back to this main screen, you hit the left pointing arrow again as well. And then you could select colors. And in the colors area, you'll see that this theme comes with a predefined palette. If I wanted to override those options, I can do that. I could say, let's see what the gradients offers me and see if my theme looks good with the gradients. Or if I have selected a background color like this, then maybe I would want to unselect it at a later time, and that would be okay. I could also pick from some of the other gradient options. Right now, I don't have the background visible on my screen because I've done some settings here, but I could pick out all sorts of colors and gradient options inside the palette. I can also, inside either solid or gradient, showing here, I could pick if I wanted to include additional colors inside of my palette. So to have this open, I advise you, developers especially, if you're building sites for clients, if you would like to be a little cutting edge and use a block theme, research how to lock blocks on your child themes, especially because what you could do here is go picking all of the colors, and theme designers and developers select a palette for a reason. If I add custom colors here, I might say this is fuchsia. I don't know if I'm even spelling fuchsia correctly. And then I could go on to the next one and pick, whatever other color I wanted to, whether it goes with it necessarily or not. We'll go with like this and call it Kermit. There we go. It's a nice green. So you get the idea. If I've added these colors here, they're there and I've given them a name. What I would recommend that you do is at least consult some type of a color palette generator if you're not good with the colors, and let it help you decide what your hex codes are that you should include down here. Pro tip, if you click on where it says zeros, it's going to automatically copy that. Click on the sliders and then put in the number value that you actually want. If you're delivering this for a client, there is new work being done for theme settings so that you can lock some of these features up. You'll just want to look for locking blocks inside of, I believe the core channel has some posts about it. And I know that at developer.wordpress.org, there are a few help resources around that as well. It's still a new part, but it's important if you're building a site for a client that they don't come in and add all the colors. I've had clients do that.
Courtney, Vincent in the chat is asking
Yep.
if it's possible to delete some color options from the palette as well.
Good question. It depends. So if I wanted to come back into my custom area, and I'll hit plus just so that they show up, but I could hit minus on this, and then I can take those ones away. Can I delete the ones that are here? Not without going through a child theme. Since this is a pre-built theme, there's not a good way in this location to delete that color file here. Yeah, if you build a child theme, you could remove it from this, or if you, in the not too distant future, we will have a way. This is slightly ahead, Vincent, but I like the questions. In the top right corner, we have the 3 dots. It's called the Kebab Menu. Funny name, kebab, like food. That area, the options that you see there, it does things like turning on the top toolbar. I turn that top toolbar on and off, especially when I'm building sub-navigation menus in block themes, because the sub-nav menu, like if I had child pages coming down from this menu, sometimes the toolbar gets in the way of seeing it. So we're not all, this is beta. So that top toolbar is up here. But Vincent, what you were asking regarding colors, one of the things that we'll hopefully see in version 6 is there's a track ticket and also a GitHub issue that need to be approved and passed for this to happen. But you'll see that there is an export option here. That export option will let you export all of the things you define in your styles, your templates, your template parts when we get to that. And in the near future, we will also be able to basically run all of that into one export file. And from that, you've got a theme that you could go and install somewhere else without touching a lot of PHP. We're almost there. Stay tuned for more. We're not quite there yet. But when that happens, it should make it easier for you to build out themes and adjust the color options.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome for agencies and freelancers and all of that, trying to get started real fast from site to site to be able to build kind of that foundation, that baseline to port over to get started on the next one.
For sure. Also inside of styles, we have layout, and the layout gives you right now just the ability to add padding around your site. So if I put 50 pixels in there, you would see it all comes in with a 50 pixel margin or a 50 pixel padding area. I mix up padding and margin. A lot of us do, I think. I know that it's padding, but there you go. So I've set it back to 0, or I could erase it. The other part inside of styles to take a lot of attention with is the blocks. And so inside of the blocks, what's interesting here is you can define for things like a quote or a pull quote. If you would like to style those in a specific way, you could get into various settings. Each block will have different settings. So not one thing will be consistent in this experience. Verse, I would say, yeah, Verse has colors and typography. So to get here, I know I'm going quick. Let me slow down for a moment. in global styles, I go to blocks. Inside of the blocks, you pick something. The verse block gives me a few options. It depends upon the plugins you have installed as to what shows here. All of the ones that you see here are the ones that are default with WordPress. If you install, I know Nick Diego just rolled out a social share plugin, and it's almost similar, but it has style settings in this location if I were to have that installed here as well. So if I look inside of verse, I get the choice for verses to style what colors I want things to be for the background, the text, the links, etc. And I can define the palette that's available. Here's the palette that I have. I can define inside of background that I would want it to have this background. And then inside of text, I might want it to have this color for the text. And so I'm beginning to style the way that specifically the verse block would display. Now, I don't have one on my screen to show you how that ends up looking, but hopefully you get the idea that each block can be styled. And if you are using third-party plugins, they are just beginning the process of putting style options over in the global styles. They have had options in Customizer sometimes. So they're going to have to dual support classic themes and now also global styles, perhaps, for where some of that information is. Again, if you find me on Twitter or something like that, I can give you resources if you're a developer and you're like, I want to look up the information on how to get my plugin to put the things here. There are resources in the docs site on WordPress for those things. So that is our global styles. So this site is, about halfway done. But I thought, what would it be like to walk me through actually creating this? You can see how the list view works over here. That's just a beginning tour of what we've got. Let me hit save in case I did. That will save. You can see my custom styles that I changed. And under preview, I could choose to, again, similar to posts or pages, I could look at it in mobile or tablet mode if I wanted to. So if I click on the tablet mode, it shrinks on in, and mobile mode will give me that preview as well. So parts of this are starting to come together. But if we're looking at a site that, if I go to Appearance, Editor, and this is one of my other sites, if I start from blank, the front of my site looks roughly like this when you first get going. You're like, whoa, that doesn't look anything like the theme in the demo. And how many times have we seen that in WordPress? That's because we have some setup work to do to get it to look the same. So when I first install it, I've got demo content. In WordPress, we have something called a theme unit test data. It's you import a bunch of post pages, navigation menus in one XML file, and you've got a site full of fake content. It's great for demos like this. So that's what I've got installed. And when I am looking in here, you'll see that this is the top level navigation, and it's filled up with lots of things. If I want to start styling this, first thing I'm going to do, and I see Howa in here, Howa will like this. The very first thing that we need to do is tell it that we want to have a front page versus just the default all pages inside of WordPress. And to do that, I need to change things in a couple places. When I go to Site Editor and then Templates, you'll see in the top right corner, I can hit Add New and create. It automatically knows that we want to add a front page. If you have other types of templates in WordPress, so we've had various templates, and the template editor has been around. All of these things in the past, like our 404 page, if we wanted to change that, maybe liven it up with something besides the search bar, we would have to know PHP to add information there. Now we can do all of these things using templates and the block editor. So we don't need to have to muck about in PHP files as much. However, the options that you see in the templates are the options that WordPress supports so far. So if you make a custom post type and want a template for that, it could be a little bit tricky at this time, I'll say. More support I would expect will be coming in the near future, but we don't have a lot of additional templates that are fully supported by the themes yet. Stay tuned, buyer beware. So if I add a new front page here, that gives me the front page experience. And the reason that I did that is because by default, it was going to show just a page and a comment box below it, and I couldn't do quite the layout that I wanted. So I made a front page to have as a layout. And you think, well, gosh, that looks really sparse and blank right now. It does. I would start going through the patterns, and patterns are inside of, you could get to patterns whether you're in the editor for your entire site or you're in a post or a page. We call this blue box at the top the block inserter. And when I select the block inserter, I have blocks, patterns, and reusable blocks. There is, inside of the patterns, different patterns that come with your theme. One of the things to consider when you are assessing if a theme is good or not is all of the patterns. This is, think of it as a layout, not necessarily for an entire page, but maybe it's the layout for the headers already done. So when I scroll through the headers, I could see, here's one. That one looks good. So I've got a large header area. It has big title text, and it's got an image showing here. And then I might want to, after I go through that, you'll see it's got some space down below. Maybe the next thing I want to add in, choose a block, and I will go in and pick an additional pattern. Maybe have my email opt-in showing here. And that was right inside the featured option. So you have lots of different patterns available to you. And this particular theme, 2022, comes with nearly 70 different patterns, which is mind-boggling. They went very strong on creating lots of patterns. Let me get my cursor in there. And again, block inserter. Oh, give me a moment. Doesn't want to insert. There we go. It was jumping just a second. This is because I'm running it on local software, I'm sure. While I'm waiting, I'll do a quick check. Looking through the comments real fast. Building with FSC, go the FSC route. Yes, I agree. Go the FSC route. I like that. So I might jump into this area and add in another section like the query. And I'll explain what those are in just a moment. So this is my site starting to come together before your eyes. What you would want to do from here is change all the information to reflect your own site, of course. You'll see that this is all, watch birds. The whole theme is about birds and aviation, and it's great. But you can modify all of these things. So when I start looking through, this is the front page of my site beginning to come together. I'd want to say, oh, this navigation menu, that doesn't look the way I want. It's not in any kind of order. In fact, it's even the wrong menu. Turn on list view now. I've dropped some patterns in. I've got a beginning place to start from. And when I go to select my navigation menu, you'll see that this just says navigation and page list. That's because it recognizes this navigation was made with the classic theme. That's one of the experiences to be aware a little bit. The navigation theme in block mode and classic mode are now vastly different, and how we go about modifying those. This sees everything as one block at the moment. You'll notice that because in the list view on the left-hand side, it just says page list. It's going to pick whatever you had inside of a classic theme as a menu, as your default experience here. But maybe I have some other menus that I would like to use instead. In fact, I do. So you have to select. And this is why the list view becomes important. If I were to try and click to get to that, show me all my menu options, I'm on one block and it's only giving me the block toolbar for that one block. But if I select the higher level in the list view that says navigation, now I see I can manage all the navigation. And I have classic menus and I have other menus that might show up here too. I could create a new menu if I wanted to. So I might select that I already had a menu called short. And when I convert it to that menu, mine has doubles in there because this is a sandbox and I sometimes add a lot of things. But you'll see that that menu changed, and each of those items inside of it now is a specific item in the list view. That's an area I've seen people getting stumped on, is using navigation menus and how all of that works, and how to create child pages and things like that. So if I had in the navigation menu a time where I wanted to use a child or a sub-nav menu item, this is where I will automatically go turn on that top toolbar for now. because creating those child items, the toolbar will be in the way, and nobody wants that. So if I want to make a sub navigation, a child of that top parent, I'll hit that sub nav menu button. And I might, in this area, I hit add the link, I clicked on the box, and you can see some posts and pages that have been recently created. And I could select any of those. Or if I start typing something else in, other, just make a page called other, it will start recognizing you don't have it. Of course, my mobile software wants to be a little slow on me at the moment. I assure you that at the bottom, it would show you, if my local software weren't being slow while I'm broadcasting, the option to create a draft page here and name it as such. So it doesn't see the page I'm trying to refer to. Live demo, of course, at the moment. It would ask you, do you want to create this as a draft? And I would say yes. So you could run your experiments through on creating these sub-nav menu items. Also in this location, you could select other ones that have been there. You could just keep adding plus, plus, plus. Or you could say, I would like to make a child of that second layer. And then inside of that, I could say, I want to use this as my next layer. And so my slide outs are starting to build. So over here, you get the idea. You could continue layering however deep you would like to go through this navigation menu, test the limits of it. Once you've got it in place, you'll see that things start sliding out to the side the way that you would like. So you could really do a lot with this menu. At the moment, what's not...
It looks like you can rename those menu items as well while you're in there.
Yes. Yeah. So if I wanted to just call this instead blog, I could just rename it over to blog, and that would work. I manage my navigation menu often by floating the top toolbar. We expect that to be fixed in version 6. In fact, I've tested in future versions of Gutenberg already, and it should be fixed in version 6. For now, float your top toolbar. It's not too bad to do that. If I wanted, go ahead again, Marcus.
That's okay. Sorry. If people do find things like the navigation menu getting blocked or whatever, where should people go to report that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. GitHub/WordPress/Gutenberg/issues. Here is the place to go to do your searching to see what is happening. A lot of what you're seeing, I am referring you to WordPress/Gutenberg on GitHub, and you see there are lots of issues open. If I go to issues, oh boy, are there a lot of issues that are open, which is fine. We're doing a whole lot of work. I'm sending folks here to search and see if someone else has reported it. And if someone else has reported it and you can repeat that instance yourself, tag on to their thing if you've got something helpful to add to it. So if someone indicates something about the image block and they describe what their issue is, other people might tack on a comment and say, I can confirm, and here is the screencast of my confirmation. It's okay to do this. Remember, folks, that we build the Gutenberg features that we see in block themes, the block editor, all of that, using the Gutenberg plugin. And so Gutenberg, the plugin, has features that are a little bit further ahead than what you have by downloading WordPress from .org core live sites. If you want to work into the future, as I like to think of it, the Gutenberg plugin in the WordPress.org directory, if you install that, might have some of these things already fixed for you, worth testing out if you like to live on the cutting edge. And if you want to get really far ahead, I did a workshop with our core contributor, George Mamadashvili, along with Andy Fragan and Birgit. And maybe, Marcus, you could grab the link before we wrap today to show that.
Yeah.
If you want to work far into the future and see WordPress in the release candidate phases, or test the Gutenberg plugin further ahead than what's in stable core, to see if those bugs are still there, that's another thing I would encourage folks to do for sure, is to work a little bit ahead, look a little ahead when we do our testing. Yeah, good stuff. Give yourself some grace on the navigation bar. I will tell you that. I expect a lot of improvements coming in version 6 with that in particular. I'm bringing my toolbar back to where it was. And what I would tell you is that if you say, I would like to style or change something about the navigation menu, and you really want to get at controls for the navigation menu, you need to make sure you select the parent item in the list view. That parent item is here. And that will give you some additional options. So I could say how I would like to align my navigation menu. I could change the spacing between things. In this location you saw, I could select the menus. I also can have a list view that is specific just to that one navigation menu item. So I have those same 3 stack lines that we saw earlier, but now it's only in reference to the navigation menu itself. And so here you can, again, drag things up, down, around, move it however you would like to move it to get things situated where you want them to be. Also worth checking is over in the settings. Sometimes you have more than what this toolbar will show you. So I'm working on the entire navigation. It gives me this block toolbar that has the most common settings available for it. But if I wanted to see more of them, turn on your settings on the right-hand side. And here you can see more options like the mobile toggle. Do you want the mobile toggle to always show or only show when you're really on mobile? You can choose what you would like it to do in those cases. You could choose also if you want it to automatically open and click, or if you would like to go and change any of your colors. Oh, that's lovely. So yeah, what designers should not be doing. So you can go in and, go through all the different options that are in that settings area on the side. I would also draw attention to the advanced, and under the advanced, it shows you how to name things and lets you delete the menu, and also your HTML anchors, and if you need to assign a specific CSS class to those things. So navigation menu, give yourself some time. Block navigation is going to be a little bit different than what we're used to over the last, I don't know, gosh, like 17 years in WordPress. It feels different. That's for sure. So another thing that I brought in on the page that might be a little bit interesting or confusing is the section that is the query loop. So if I jump down to where it says query loop, I brought that in. That's your preview of your posts, or you can choose to specify what you want it to include. So I brought it in as a pattern. And when you have a query loop, it might also show as a post list. You could do that, and that's going to default to showing you just posts. But the query loop, you could define if you would like the query loop to use posts, pages, some other kind of custom post type if you've got that support available. You can define where you want that information to pull in from under the post type on the side. You also can say how many columns you want and sorting order. So when we refer to WordPress, the loop, from the days of customizing what shows in the loop as it relates to showing a few blog posts in a preview mode, you could get to all of those features either using the options under your settings, or some of them are also available from the top level query loop in the navigation bar for it. So I could say here, how many items do I want to display? And do I want these things to appear as full width or several in a grid pattern? I can also do fun things like sorting. Maybe instead of the date being at the bottom, maybe I want it to go after the title, or maybe I don't want it at all, and that's okay as well. So you could get in and change a lot of settings with your query loop block. And you could also define things like how wide do you want some of these features to be. So I was on featured image, and you'll notice featured image will allow you to say, do you want your image to be aligned in different ways? Do you want to use duotones and give it that fun color look? Mine's in preview mode, so it'll show well for you on the finished version. And then it's also worth noting that I don't have a footer yet on my site, but I do have the header. Let's go add a footer real quick, and I'll explain what templates and template parts are a little bit more. So let me get my cursor here, add a pattern. Under patterns, go to footers. And within the footer area, I could say, I like this one. And here we go. There's my footer and done. So I'm going to hit save here. And before I jump over to template parts, a template part would be something that isn't an entire page, but it is reused in multiple places throughout your site. And you can define that in one spot. The code comes from one location and gets repurposed into many locations. It doesn't have to be a header or a footer. You could have other reasons to make template parts. if I go to, again, the navigation toggle in the top left corner, it looks like the WordPress logo. If you've already updated or uploaded a site icon, it will change to whatever that site icon is. Now, if I look at my template parts, you'll see I've got headers, footers, and I can make additional ones in the top left under Add New. I could add in as many template parts as I need in this location. So if I wanted to edit the way that my footer appears, let's give it a moment. There we go. Local software gets a little funny when you're on the live broadcast. And I go to my footer. Let's see, there we go. So in this location, I could then start adding in, if I wanted like social icons down here. I could add in the social icons and say that I wanted to have Twitter show there, sure. And I would actually have to put an address in for that to be publicly viewable. I'm just going to stick a placeholder link in there. And also, again, as a reminder, when you select the entire parent level of an item, pretend that I also added in LinkedIn and Facebook and other social icons. If I select the entire top level parent where it says social icons there, I now have additional settings inside the right-hand column to say if I would like the colors to be different for those things. So I can make let's do white background, and I can pick a different color for icon background color. Here we go. So now if I put my mouse off of that a little bit, you'll see that I've just changed that Twitter icon to be the colors of my theme, which is great. It makes it a lot easier for those that are not wanting to invest in coding methods to get in and change a lot of these settings. You'll know that you're in a template part because you are going to see these black bars around the side. The black bars will let you test how that template looks in mobile view and different aspect ratios as well by pinching on the sides. You can also find template parts. This is a little bit of a stump or a slight trick way to do this. If you are not in the editor, but you are inside of pages or posts, let me go to add a new page. And we've got a way to add in from the right-hand side. You see that it says default template. You could select which template you've got. If you want to add a new one and maybe create something like a mobile landing page, instead of link in bio or something like that we see on all the social sites, maybe you want to make your own custom template right on your existing site and do away with the header and the footer and just really focus in on things that would be mobile specific. You could do that using just a regular post or a page and creating a new template from the right-hand side. That would show if I made it, test, create, and now if I were to look at that, you'll see that it gives me notice that it's really emphasizing you've got the black bars all around your screen. And I could get to the same thing if I were to look over again under editor and template parts, it would show up there too. So you have a lot of tools now at your fingertips to get to various settings and things. And I'll take you through a quick tour of what I've done for a more final one before we open it up for a good bit of questions. So here, if I look at, again, those template parts, oh, my test isn't showing there. Did I lie or did I not hit publish? I'll have to go back and test that. But you could get to templates and template parts. Oh, it might have actually saved it as a template. Let me double check. Test, yeah, it put it under templates. Good to know, good to know. And I am still learning too. So my done version of this, appearance, editor, as I walk through laying out my site, building out my front page, my done version of this might end up looking something along these lines. Let it load in. And I know that's a lot of ground to cover today. I've been testing this a while, and it takes a while to get acclimated to the new way. But as you look through, here's my done version, and I've got all of these showing here. One thing I probably should touch very briefly on, if I wanted to make these are some features that are like the hidden gems of, oh, sorry, it jumped. The hidden gems of dealing with FSE. I've just selected, I held my shift key down on my keyboard, and I just selected the featured image, title, date, and excerpt. If I wanted to make that a group, I could do it either at the post template level or I could do it here. I could turn this into a group. And then with a group, anytime you use that group option, you now can set specific things like maybe I want to have a border of 1 rem. And I love that I could choose rems and other things and make it a solid line. And you get the idea. So I could also start adding a radius in there of like 0.5 rem, give it some nice rounded corners. And I might want to shrink that down to like, 0.5 or something less obnoxious than that, and change out what that color looks like. So you can start defining a lot more elements using the group block. There's also a row block to check out too. If you use something that is a row, this is showing as a row. The row gives you additional features as well. So you could say, I want this row to span from side to side on my screen full width. Let's get full width in there. So the row block is another one to experiment with. Rows and groups are like, they're really close to being where I want them to be. Not quite. Like I want with the group, I want to be able to add a box shadow behind my lines. Not quite there yet, maybe version 6. That was a whole lot of information. And I want to make sure that you all know before we jump over to questions that we've got a couple of good resources for you to check out. First of all, Hawa is here in the chat with us as well. Hawa is one of the training team co-reps. Thank you for being along, Hawa. We help maintain, maybe someone wants to publish those as individual things. We help maintain the content that goes out on learn.wordpress.org. So if you're feeling like this crash course was maybe, let me stop sharing my screen if I'm showing my screen. All of the content that you see on learn.wordpress.org is a community initiative, and we welcome people to come by and help edit and revise. But also, you are welcome to make use of this content. Lesson plans are good for meetup organizers. Workshop videos are great if you need to send something to your client or need to learn it yourself. And courses are good for a really deep dive. There are also social learning spaces there, which are events like what you have here. And somebody will be presenting live and helping answer questions. So on all kinds of different topics. Lots of great resources there as well to help you get fully up to speed with full site editing. All right, questions,
Awesome.
folks.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions. We'll run through them in just a second. It was a lot of content, a lot of really great content. So I do want to reiterate, a couple of people have asked in the chat already about this being recorded. Will I be able to watch this later? In addition to all the links that Courtney just shared in the chat, this is being recorded, and we will send out a link to the replay to the email address that you registered for this event with. And so you'll be able to kind of go back and rewatch it at your own pace, kind of pausing and playing along with if you want to test it out and sort of move along with Courtney as she goes through some of those things. So just wanted to go ahead and reiterate that, and we can look at some of the questions. One question, the last kind of piece that you were talking about some was template parts there. What's kind of the difference or use case, I guess, between template parts and reusable blocks?
That's a great one. So template parts, think of it as the pattern, the behind things. If you've got a background color or your fonts set in a certain location, a template part is perfect for that. The times when you might choose instead to use a reusable block is if you want the exact same content, the text, to appear everywhere. A pattern is saying, I want it to be styled like this. It might be in part of your posts. It could be in part of your front page of your site, like you saw on mine. That's more about show me the shapes and the styles and put them where I want them to be, and let me swap the content. Let me change that image. Let me change that text. Reusable blocks are ideal if you want to keep all the text and everything completely identical, not change a thing. And then when you need to update that reusable block all across your site, you could do that one time, and that applies everywhere. I did do some posts. I'm dropping in a link that's kind of a walkthrough of what we just did today. That's on GoDaddy's main blog, and it breaks down all of the features that I went over today into also deeper dives as well, awesome. including templates, template parts, reusable blocks, and block patterns, and when to use which. It's confusing.
All the different pieces. Question from Ron. Ron says, I think folks may wonder if by editing full site editing in WordPress 5.9, it commits the build for other themes subsequently made active. I assume maybe not a full site editing theme. I guess the question is sort of how does that info get stored under the hood? What happens if you switch from a block theme to a non-block theme?
Yeah, I've only tested going back and forth between classic and block. I have not tested with premium themes. So where information gets stored in premium themes can be a little bit different. I would say the navigation block is going to be consistent across different locations. As far as if you build it inside of WordPress, I can't speak to third-party themes and where they store their data. Some are notorious for not storing content where the rest of WordPress puts their content inside the content tables in the database. So worth testing and having backups. I think, though, that if you're going from one block theme to another block theme, even if it's not on .org, but if it is a block theme, most likely they're going to store content where they need to so that anytime you switch, you've got your content still there.
Yeah, themes that are working the WordPress way should work from block theme to block theme. One of the questions that I had, Vincent also asked in the chat, we used to be able to add custom CSS in Customizer. Is it still possible to add custom CSS somewhere?
If you make a child theme. True story. That's where I think what you might see is there are some things like the box shadow that I mentioned. When I made a group of blocks and I set a border around it and I wanted to have a shadow effect under it, I just did this on my own site over the weekend and I couldn't do it. So I didn't feel like rolling a child theme yet. It's not quite at the point where I want to make a child theme. So I just stuck the snippets plugin, which is a third-party plugin. Code snippets. It's a good one. It allows you to drop in custom CSS and a few others. So that one I would suggest if you need a different way to get at that. They will eventually have enough feature completeness that they hope to not need custom CSS somewhere.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Ron also asked, what are other block-based themes that are available right now? I just did a quick search while you were chatting. If you go to wordpress.org/themes, there is a way to filter by full site editing compatible themes. Currently, it looks like there are 47.
There are. And I also know that there are a couple of other themes that are out there that may or may not show up in that theme repo yet. So those are the ones that we know on .org. And of course, the ones in .org are probably going to get a lot of use. I have not looked, but I'm double checking. On my soon to test list is Frost WP, which is Brian Gardner, who made the Revolution theme I started with in learning PHP, as well as Studio Press and the Genesis themes. So there are a few others that are out there that are available that may not show in .org that are still worth experimenting with. I also know that here at GoDaddy, we've got work underway for the Go theme. It's not ready yet for FSE, but in the not too distant future, we might see it on the roadmap. Yep, good stuff. Other questions?
I don't see any other questions. Ron says code snippets rocks. I agree.
Yeah.
That is a good one and might lend itself to being able to inject some CSS if you need to.
Yeah, for sure. And I also today, if we've got theme and plugin developers, I would recommend Themegen App is one. Let me double check my links before I publish them. So there's theme. If you're ready to start playing with creating a theme, there is Themegen.app. If somebody that's present knows about Carolina's tool to build it, Carolina has a way to create the files you need to make your own theme. And then I also just today saw over on WP Tavern a great write-up from Sal at Web Dev Studios made a really great plugin that I started playing with earlier this morning. These are, if you're getting into development and want to get familiar with things, this plugin is for developers. This plugin will help you know all of the settings that you see in existing patterns and blocks and things all over your site so that as you're beginning to wrap your head around, I need to make my plugin work like that, you could read what other people have done in an easier way, all of the JSON code that goes with that. So if we've got devs here that might be interested in those, and let me grab, I'll grab Carolina's link if anyone's interested in starting to make themes. Yeah.
Vincent was asking if you have anything that you can share about theme.json files.
Yeah, so theme.json files, that theme.gen app that I just shared with you is a way to, if you want to learn theme.json is, instead of having to navigate all of the settings in the GUI manner with my mouse and clicking on all the things, if you want to build the theme.json file yourself, you would still need to, at this time, drop this into a child theme or make your own theme, because when WordPress runs an update on a theme, that theme.json file will change all of your settings back to whatever the standard is.
Wiped out.
Yeah. So there is a way to make theme.json files using a bit of a GUI interface. If you're like, I want to get there, but I don't remember and coding and check out themegen.app as one source for that. I'm looking back on my timeline as we're talking, because there's also a way to create your theme files, and you could just go in and drop in your theme.json stuff. And Carolina over at fullsiteediting.com actually made the files for that. So I am looking back through my notes to get that. There it is. Here we go. I found the link. This one is a really good one that I refer to often as well. So if you're like, cool, I got a crash course in 2022, let me make my own. Here's some tips. Now, that'll be my next thing that I'm going to be working on for a few months. Building out the themes.
Just for fun, why not? Ron did mention aptly that under appearance, where normally you would find the customizer when you enable a block-based theme, that gets switched to editor. So
it does and doesn't. In 2022, Ron, you are correct. I know we're close to the end of the time. Yeah. Block-based keeps it in, and plugins that use settings in Customizer will still show when that plugin is installed.
Yep. Good to know.
Yes. Test.
Yeah, that is all the questions, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A lot of questions. There has a lot of content in there. A lot of really great stuff. I'm definitely going to watch it back and follow along, I think, and try and get some of this going. I saw Ken, one of our other colleagues, is hanging out in the chat saying that he is going to start experimenting and playing with a new site that he is just barely getting started. So I think he's going to try the FSE route, full site editing route, and see how it goes for him too. So I think that's part of the takeaway here, is just to go play, right? Go mess with it, see what you can do, see what you can't do. If you find bugs or things that you would like to see, then you shared the GitHub Gutenberg issues.
Yeah.
Add them there. So when we all pitch in and find the bugs and offer enhancements and stuff, that's how it continues to get better and better over time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us today as we were going through this. I'll put out some more times where we go through some testing, looking ahead at additional features coming. So for that, we'll probably be playing with the Gutenberg plugin and as well, and maybe release candidate versions when we get closer to version 6. So do stay tuned. It's good to test early and often, not just after the release. Test before if you can, so that we can file all the bugs so that it's good when it ships.
Awesome. Yeah, that transitions well into the wrap up. Those events that you're talking about will be at events.godaddy.com. Like any of our past events, I shared the one that you did with testing Gutenberg early in the chat earlier, but that's also on events.godaddy.com. So for any past and future events, make sure that you check that out. Otherwise, that's it for this one. Thanks again, Courtney, for coming on and sharing all of that.
Absolutely. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.